This week in our Torah, we are reading the story of Noah. And given the situation in our world today, it would not surprise me if somewhere on this planet there is a man or woman who is building an ark on instruction from God in preparation for the world's destruction once again. This week's Torah portion describes the state the world had descended into. The earth is described as being wicked and corrupt. And God essentially throws God's hands in the air, exasperated with it all. And we read that God said to Noah, Vayomer Elohim leNoach, Ketz kol basar ba lifnei, ki malah haaretz chamas mipneihem vehineni meshchitam et haaretz. God said to Noah, I've decided to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with lawlessness. Because of them, I am about to destroy them with the earth. Those eerie words in that Torah portion from thousands of years ago that we're reading this Shabbat, Ki maleh haaretz chamas, because the earth was filled with lawlessness. As we think about the story of the flood, the Torah portion makes clear that the flood is the most destructive thing that can be brought upon the earth, destroying everything in its path. And it's no accident that when Hamas came up with a code name for their operation, for their terrorist attack on October 7th, they called it Al-Aqsa Tufan. The word Tufan means flood. Their mission was destruction. Just like the world was destroyed before, they sought to destroy the world as we know it. And as we look out on this planet, we are certainly witnessing, just as Noah did, wickedness, violence, and corruption in our world. When so many of the people are protesting about events in the Middle East, condemning Israel for their use of force, without mentioning the fact that 1,300 people were murdered just 2 weeks ago, that feels wicked. When protests call for a ceasefire and for Israel to stop their offensive without recognizing that there are still 200 innocent civilians being held hostage in Gaza, that feels corrupt. And you don't need to look too far to see violence, with rockets raining down from terrorist groups, not just Hamas, but Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iranian-backed groups in Syria, and the Houthis from Yemen. For God, at the time of Noah, the world had gotten so bad that it was better to destroy it and start again than to try to repair it. These past 2 weeks have brought the brokenness of the world into sharp focus for us all. But we also know that in the story of Noah, God promised that God wouldn't destroy the world again. In many ways, God put the onus on us for how we would respond to the brokenness, what we would do about the wickedness, the violence, and the corruption. As we reflect on events that are taking place in Israel, when I have spoken to friends and family over there, the word that keeps coming up is that they're heartbroken. They describe a situation of heartbreak. Heartbreak over the loss of life, heartbreak over the captives, heartbreak over their feeling of insecurity and the lack of safety that they've experienced in these last couple of weeks. And on many occasions, I've shared with you the family text group, Mishpacha, which means family, that I'm on with family in Israel. And on each and every day, at some point or another, there have been texts essentially saying, Abba, Ima, Safta, ? Mum, Dad, Grandma, ? And the reason those texts come is because there's another rocket attack coming over, and the children are worried about whether their parents and their grandmother have made it to the bomb shelter, or if the rocket's affecting them more directly. And the other message that keeps coming across in that group is to tell our story. That's one of the things that Israel needs from us today, is for us to find the way to share the heartbreak and to tell their story with the world. And while Israel might be on the front lines, we know that events in the Middle East are affecting us here. Just last Friday, when many were concerned about a possible jihad day, we saw attendance in our ELC drop as people stayed home for fear of what might happen. When we had a session with our 7th graders, our A students, one of the questions that came up when we offered them the chance to ask anonymous questions was, what should they say to their friends who are scared to come to the synagogue for their bar mitzvah? That's the world we're living in today. And the story of Noah can be very helpful for us in reflecting on those events. The first lesson of Noah is that it doesn't happen quickly. We witness 40 days and 40 nights of rain, and then there's all that time in the ark before Noah can eventually emerge from it. This is going to be more of a marathon than a sprint, and we need to be prepared and resolved for the weeks, months that lie ahead. The second lesson of Noah is that he is described as Ish Tzadik Tamim Haya B'Doratav. He was righteous in his generation. They don't say that he was just righteous, they say he was righteous in his generation. For us, that's the question of what does it mean to be righteous in this difficult time? What does it mean to be righteous when these events are taking place around us? We are living in a world where there is a lack of nuance, where things are often seen in black or white, and media often jump to conclusions far too quickly. Many of us witnessed the way that initially an Israeli rocket was blamed for the destruction of a hospital in Gaza and the death of 500. And we watched the drip of information as eventually it transpired that it was a misfired Islamic Jihad rocket, and the death toll was much, much lower. Being righteous in our generation means calling out the bias, means calling out the simplicity of seeing the situation as black and white. It means helping people to see the nuance, to see the both and to recognize that the situation is complicated and not the way that many try to present it. And then, unfortunately, the other lesson of Noah is that these experiences take their toll. The part of the story of Noah that we never study in religious school, so I'm sorry to the children in the room, is that when he gets off the ark, the first thing he does is he plants a vineyard and he gets drunk. After all of those events, after all that he had witnessed, he needed that release. And we have to be prepared that these events are going to take their toll on all of us. But when we think about the story of Noah, the important thing as well is to note we are not B'nai Noach. We are not known as the children of Noah because Noah doesn't become the one who enters into the sacred covenant with God. We are B'nai Avraham v'Sarah, the children of Abraham and Sarah. 10 generations later, that's the covenant we are part of. And so we might also think about the contrast between Noah and Abraham. Noah accepted that there would be destruction and just looked out for himself and his family. That's not the approach that we take. Abraham was someone who, despite it all, kept his tent open on all sides to welcome people in. He found those ways, despite everything, to be open to others. And then Abraham's the one who bargains with God to save the innocent. When God says that God will destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham enters into a negotiation back and forth, trying to see if there may be some innocent people to save. That's our ancestor, trying to do whatever he can to save the innocent. And then finally, Abraham and Sarah are the ones who find ways to spread blessing and to be a blessing for everyone. That's the original call that they received. And so at this time, while Noah may be instructive for the moment in which we're living, it is Abraham and Sarah who set the example that we need to follow. To open up our tent, to do whatever we can to stand up for the innocent and to find a way to spread blessing amidst the darkness. Shabbat Shalom.